My name is Emma Carter. I'm 33 years old, and there was a time when I believed being accepted by your husband's family was just as important as being loved by your husband. I spent years trying to prove that I was good enough for them. I cooked for them, remembered birthdays, bought thoughtful gifts, listened to their problems, and showed up whenever they needed help. I never asked for anything in return. All I wanted was respect. But on my husband's 35th birthday, his mother stood in front of more than 40 people, smiled at me, and publicly humiliated me. What she didn't know was that earlier that same day, I had found an envelope hidden inside an old desk in their house, and what was inside that envelope would eventually expose the one secret his entire family had spent years protecting. My husband's name was Ethan. We had been married for 7 years. We met at a bookstore when I was 25. He was standing in the history section, holding 3 books and arguing with his friend about which one was better. I accidentally bumped into him, and one of the books fell to the floor. He looked at me and said, "I think that was a sign I should stop buying books." I laughed. That was how it started. Ethan was charming without trying to be. He was patient, thoughtful, and gentle. Or at least that was the man I believed I married. His family was different. His mother, Victoria, was elegant, wealthy, and extremely controlling. She had a way of smiling while saying something cruel. His father, Richard, rarely spoke unless it was necessary. His younger sister, Claire, was more like her mother than anyone else. From the beginning, I could tell Victoria didn't think I was good enough for Ethan. I wasn't from a wealthy family. My parents owned a small neighborhood restaurant, and I grew up watching them work long hours just to keep the business alive. Victoria came from money. Her family owned several properties and had built a successful construction company. She never said I was beneath them directly. She didn't need to. She would say things like, "Emma, that's a very practical dress. I suppose practical is good when you're starting out." Or, "Your parents must be proud of how independent you've become." The way she emphasized the word independent made it sound like an insult. Ethan always told me not to worry about it. "That's just Mom," he'd say. "She takes time to warm up to people." I believed him. 7 years passed, and Victoria never warmed up, but I kept trying. Then, 3 months before Ethan's birthday, something changed. Victoria called me one afternoon and invited me to her house. She said she wanted to discuss the birthday celebration. I assumed she wanted help planning the party. Instead, she sat across from me in her living room and said, "Emma, I think it's time we have an honest conversation." I smiled politely. "Of course." She folded her hands. "Ethan has accomplished a lot. His career is doing very well. Our family has certain expectations." I waited. "What kind of expectations?" "The kind that protect the family." I frowned. "I'm not sure I understand." She smiled. "You will." I left that house feeling uneasy. 2 weeks later, Ethan started acting strangely. He began taking phone calls outside. He changed the password on his laptop. He became unusually protective of his phone. When I asked him if something was wrong, he said work was stressful. I wanted to believe him. Then, one evening, I overheard him talking to Claire in the kitchen. "She can't know yet," Claire whispered. Ethan replied, "I know." I froze at the hallway entrance. "Know what?" I asked. They both turned around. Claire smiled immediately. "Nothing." Ethan walked toward me. "We were talking about Mom's birthday gift." I looked at him. "Mom's birthday is in 6 months." He laughed nervously. "Exactly. We're planning ahead." I smiled, but something inside me had shifted. They were hiding something. I didn't know what. I decided not to push. A week before Ethan's birthday, Victoria called again. "The party is Saturday," she said. "I expect you to dress appropriately." I almost laughed. "What does that mean? Elegant? Nothing too flashy." "Okay." She paused. "And Emma?" "Yes?" "There will be some important people there. Please don't embarrass Ethan." I stared at the phone. "I never have." I'm simply reminding you. I hung up. On Saturday morning, Ethan left early to help his father prepare the venue. I was supposed to arrive later with a cake. Around noon, I drove to Victoria and Richard's estate. It was a beautiful property outside the city, with a long driveway, enormous gardens, and a guest house bigger than the apartment where I had lived after college. When I arrived, the front door was unlocked. I stepped inside and called for Ethan. No answer. I walked toward the kitchen and heard voices from the study. I wasn't trying to listen, but then I heard my name. "Emma doesn't know anything," Claire said. I stopped. Victoria replied, "Good. Keep it that way until tonight." My heart began pounding. I quietly stepped closer. "What happens if she finds out?" Claire asked. Victoria laughed softly. "She won't. She's too trusting." I felt a cold sensation move through my body. I wanted to walk in and demand answers. Instead, I backed away. Then I noticed something on the hallway table. An old wooden desk stood against the wall. I had seen it many times. It belonged to Richard's father and had been in the family for decades. One drawer was slightly open. I pulled it gently. Inside were old photographs, documents, and letters. I wasn't searching for anything. But one envelope caught my attention because it had my name written on it. Emma Carter. My hands started shaking. I looked toward the study. No one was coming. I opened the envelope. Inside was a copy of a legal document. I read the first page and felt the floor disappear beneath me. It was a prenuptial agreement. But it wasn't mine. It was a document connected to Ethan's inheritance. I kept reading. The document stated that if Ethan's marriage ended under certain circumstances, his inheritance would be transferred into a family trust controlled by Victoria and Richard. That wasn't the shocking part. The shocking part was the date. The document had been created 2 years after Ethan and I were married. That meant they had been planning something long after our wedding. I found another paper. It was a letter from a family attorney. It mentioned protecting Ethan's assets from Emma Carter. I read the sentence 3 times. My hands were trembling. Why were they trying to protect his assets from me? Then I saw another document. A property transfer. My name appeared on it. I had never signed it. I photographed every page with my phone. Then I heard footsteps. I quickly put everything back exactly where I had found it. Claire walked past me. "Emma, what are you doing here?" "I came early." She smiled. "You should be in the kitchen." I nodded. "Sure." I walked away. My mind was racing. For 7 years I had thought Victoria disliked me because I wasn't wealthy. Now I realized the truth was much worse. They weren't simply trying to keep me away from their money. They were preparing to take something from me. But what? That evening, the house filled with guests, business partners, relatives, friends, and people I barely knew arrived in expensive cars. Ethan looked happy. He hugged me when I arrived at the party room. "You look beautiful." I smiled. "Thank you." He kissed my forehead. For a moment, I wanted to tell him everything. But I couldn't. I needed to understand what was happening first. Dinner was served around 7. Everyone was laughing. Victoria stood at the front of the room and gave a speech about Ethan. She talked about his childhood, his success, and how proud she was of him. Then she looked at me. "And, of course," she said, "we should thank Emma for supporting Ethan through the years." Everyone clapped politely. I smiled. Then Victoria continued. "Although I think we all know Ethan has sacrificed more than people realize." The room became quieter. Ethan looked at his mother. "Mom?" She smiled. "I'm simply being honest." Then she raised her glass. "To Ethan, who deserves a future worthy of his family name." I felt everyone looking at me. I didn't understand what she was doing. Then Claire stood up. "Actually, Mom, maybe tonight is the perfect night." My stomach tightened. "Perfect for what?" I asked. Claire smiled. "For telling everyone the truth." Ethan stood. "Claire, stop." Victoria looked at him. "No. She needs to know." She turned toward me. Emma, how much do you think Ethan is worth? I stared at her. I don't know. She laughed. Exactly. Someone at the table shifted uncomfortably. Victoria continued. Ethan's family owns properties, investments, and business interests that existed long before you entered his life. I looked at Ethan. Why are you doing this? He whispered. Emma, I'm sorry. My heart dropped. Victoria smiled. You see, Emma, this family has always been generous, but generosity has limits. I stood up slowly. What are you trying to say? She looked around the room. I'm saying that Ethan has made some decisions that could put his inheritance at risk. I felt my chest tighten. What decisions? She stared directly at me. Marrying without protecting the family. The room went silent. I looked at Ethan. Did you know about this? He didn't answer. Ethan? Finally he said, I knew they were concerned. I felt betrayed, not because of the money, because he had allowed his mother to humiliate me in front of everyone. Victoria continued. We believe Ethan should reconsider his financial arrangements before it's too late. I stood there listening to people whisper. Someone actually said, maybe they should separate. I looked at Victoria. She expected me to cry. She expected me to beg. She expected me to defend myself. Instead, I smiled. You're right? Victoria looked surprised. What? You should protect the family assets. Ethan stared at me. Emma. I turned toward him. Don't. Then I picked up my purse. Enjoy the rest of the party. I walked out. I didn't cry until I got into my car. Then I sat behind the wheel and let the tears come. I cried because the man I loved had stood there while his mother destroyed my dignity. I cried because I suddenly understood that the past 7 years might have been built on a lie, and I cried because there was one question I couldn't stop asking myself. Why had they created that document after we were already married? The next morning, I called an attorney. I showed her the photographs I had taken. She became very serious. Emma, this is important. What is it? This document suggests that your husband's family may have been planning to restructure his assets specifically to exclude you. Can they do that? They can attempt to protect certain assets, depending on the law and how the property was acquired. But this document raises questions. What questions? She pointed to one section. This property transfer. Yes? Did you ever sign this? No. She looked at me. Then we need to find out who signed it. She ran a search. A few hours later, she called me. Emma, I found something. What? There is a signature that appears to be yours. I stared at the phone. That's impossible. I know. I never signed anything. Then someone may have forged your signature. My attorney told me to gather every document connected to our finances. I spent the next week doing exactly that. I discovered that several accounts had been opened in my name. Some were legitimate, others were not. There was also a property deed I had never seen. It listed me as the owner of a small commercial property. The property was worth almost $900,000. I had no idea it existed. I called my attorney. She said, "Don't contact Ethan yet." I listened. She continued investigating. Then she found something even more shocking. The property had originally belonged to Ethan's grandfather. 3 years ago, it had been transferred into a company controlled by Ethan's father. Then, 6 months later, it had been transferred again. This time, my name appeared on the paperwork. My attorney said, "Someone may have used your identity to create a financial shield." I asked, "Why would they put the property in my name?" She answered, "So they could later accuse you of taking it." My blood went cold. The plan became clear. They weren't just trying to protect Ethan's inheritance. They were creating a paper trail that could make me look financially dishonest. If Ethan filed for divorce, his family could claim I had secretly received a valuable property. They could use that accusation to damage my reputation and potentially gain leverage in the divorce. I couldn't believe it. I had spent 7 years trying to be accepted by these people while they were quietly building a case against me. Then I found one final document. It was a letter from Victoria to the family attorney. It said, Once Emma is removed, Ethan can regain full control. Removed. Not divorced. Removed. I stared at that word for a long time. It wasn't the language of a family that disliked me. It was the language of people planning something. I called Ethan that night. We need to talk. He came home around 8. He looked nervous. About last night? Yes. He sat down. I'm sorry. Are you? Yes. Then tell me the truth. He looked away. My mother believes you are a threat to the family. And you? He didn't answer. Ethan, do you believe I'm a threat? He finally looked at me. No. Then why did you let her humiliate me? I was scared. Of your mother? He nodded. You have been scared of her your entire life. He sighed. You don't understand what she's capable of. I placed a folder on the table. I think I understand now. He opened it. His face changed. Where did you get these? From your family's house. He looked at the documents. Emma, did you know about the forged signature? He stared at me. What? Did you know? No. Did you know about the property? No. Did you know your mother was planning to make me look like I stole it? He shook his head. I swear. I believed him. That was the first problem. Because for the first time, I realized Ethan might not be the mastermind. He might be trapped too. Then help me, I said. He looked at me. How? Tell me everything your mother has been doing. He was silent for a long time. Then he said, Mom has been trying to control my inheritance since my grandfather died. Why? Because my grandfather left most of it to me. And she controls it? Yes. How? Through a family trust. I asked, what happens if you don't follow her instructions? He looked down. She can block access to most of the money. Suddenly, everything made sense. Victoria wasn't protecting Ethan. She was controlling him, and she had convinced him that I was the reason he couldn't have the life he wanted. Why did you agree to that document? I asked. I didn't. Then why is it there? I don't know. He looked terrified. Emma, I swear to you I never signed anything. My attorney later confirmed something remarkable. Ethan's signature on one of the documents was also questionable. Someone had forged both our signatures. The family attorney was unaware. That meant someone inside Victoria's circle had been creating fraudulent documents. We needed to find out who. We decided to investigate quietly. Ethan contacted an old family accountant named Martin. Martin had worked for the family for more than 20 years. He agreed to meet us privately. When we arrived, he looked exhausted. I knew this day would come, he said. I asked, what do you mean? He looked at Ethan. Your mother has been moving money for years. Where? Into accounts controlled by your uncle. Why? Martin shook his head. Because your mother doesn't trust you. Ethan looked stunned. Martin handed us a box. Inside were old financial records. Your grandfather knew, he said. He suspected your mother would try to control the inheritance. Then why didn't he stop her? Ethan asked. He tried. Martin handed me a letter. He wrote this before he died. I opened it. The letter said that Ethan's inheritance was supposed to remain his, but if anyone attempted to manipulate or remove his spouse through fraudulent means, the trust could be challenged. I looked at Ethan. Your grandfather knew this could happen. Martin nodded. He also knew your mother would eventually choose control over family. Then Martin told us something that changed everything. The person forging the signatures isn't your mother. Who is it? Ethan asked. Martin looked at him. Claire? I stared at him. Ethan looked shocked. My sister? Martin nodded. Your mother gives the instructions. Claire handles the paperwork. We couldn't believe it. Claire had always been the quiet one, the harmless one, the sister who smiled at family dinners. But she had been forging documents for years. Martin had proof. He had copies of emails between Claire and the family attorney. They discussed creating the property transfer and preparing documents that would make me look financially irresponsible. We took everything to the authorities. An investigation began. Claire eventually admitted what she had done. She claimed she was protecting the family. Victoria denied knowing about the forged signatures, but the emails told a different story. The evidence was overwhelming. Ethan's family empire began to collapse from the inside. The family trust was challenged. The property was returned to its rightful ownership. The fraudulent documents were invalidated. Claire faced serious legal consequences. Victoria lost control of the trust. Richard, who had spent years avoiding conflict, finally admitted that he had known more than he ever told us. But the most surprising part came from Ethan. He stood in front of his family and said, "If you can't respect my wife, you don't get access to my life." Victoria stared at him as if she had never seen him before. She said, "You're choosing her over your family?" Ethan replied, "No, I'm choosing the truth over your control." I had never been prouder of him. We didn't stay in that house. We moved away and started over. Our marriage wasn't magically repaired. There were wounds that took a long time to heal. I had to learn how to trust Ethan again. He had to learn how to stop allowing his family to make decisions for him. We went to counseling. We talked for hours. Sometimes we argued. Sometimes we cried. But eventually we rebuilt something stronger than what we had before, not because we forgot what happened, but because we faced it honestly. A year later, Victoria sent me a letter. She didn't apologize. She wrote that I had destroyed her family. I read it once and put it away. I didn't destroy anything. I simply refused to let them destroy me. That became the lesson I carried forward. People sometimes call it revenge when you stand up for yourself. They call it revenge when you expose the truth. They call it revenge when someone finally faces the consequences of their actions. But I don't consider what happened revenge. Revenge would have been hurting them because they hurt me. What I did was different. I protected myself. I told the truth. I refused to stay silent, and the truth did what it always does eventually. It found the cracks in their lies. I still remember Victoria standing in front of everyone at Ethan's birthday party. She thought she was humiliating me. She thought she was proving that I didn't belong in her family. She thought I would walk out crying and never fight back. What she didn't know was that the envelope I had found that afternoon contained the beginning of the end. She thought I was the woman who knew nothing. She was wrong. I didn't know everything that day, but I knew enough to start asking questions. And once I started asking questions, the truth became impossible to hide. Today, when I think about that night, I don't remember the whispers or the judgmental looks. I remember the moment I walked out of that room with my head held high. I remember realizing that my worth had never depended on whether Victoria approved of me. I remember understanding that family isn't determined by blood, money, or a last name. Family is determined by the people who respect you when they have nothing to gain from it. Ethan's family wanted to control his future. They believed money gave them the right to control his choices. They believed I was a threat because I loved him enough to tell him the truth. But in the end, their greatest mistake was underestimating the woman they thought would stay silent. They didn't realize that I wasn't interested in their money. I didn't want their properties. I didn't want their approval. I wanted one simple thing: the truth. And once I had it, I no longer feared them. That was my victory, not their downfall, not the legal consequences, not watching their carefully built reputation collapse. My victory was standing in front of the people who had spent years trying to make me feel small and finally realizing that I didn't have to prove myself to them anymore. I was already enough, and sometimes that's the most powerful revenge of all.